going on, everybody? Welcome to the week 6 iteration of Nerding Out with Nick Bodiford. I'm your host, Nick Bodiford. I apologize for any throat clearing, sniffling, or wincing. My allergies are out of control, but we're going to blast through this thing. I am so pumped. Week 6 features a lot of really cool matchups, and I think we should all be really excited about it. Speaking of things to be excited about, actually, we've got some guests lined up for the next few weeks here. Week 7 and week 8, we'll have some medical minds on to talk all things football and injuries, life if there's time. But I'm very, very excited to welcome a couple of really smart guys onto the show. Okay, first things first, not starting with the Sunday 10 a.m. games. We are starting with the Five Guys segment. And hey, if there are any Five Guys corporate folk out there who listen to this and they're looking to sponsor a podcast, like, let me know. We could work something out. You know, the Five Guys Burgers and Fries segment brought to you by, I guess that's where I would say that. But anyway, five guys that I want to talk about. Guy number one, and there we've got a passing train. Guy number one, Taylor Heinicke, Washington football team. I'll try not to get too pumped and cover the whole football team in this segment alone, but I don't think that people are really taking Taylor Heinicke as seriously as they should. His blend of downfield passing capabilities, he's a little scattershot, but his blend of downfield passing capabilities mixed with his rushing ability it's serious. It's significant, not just in the NFL, but most importantly in fantasy. And this matchup they have against the Chiefs is like as good as it could ever be for a quarterback who's built like this. Kansas City's pass defense is atrocious. They're probably their best defensive player. If you want to make an argument for Tyrann Mathieu, I won't fight you, but Chris Jones, defensive lineman, he's banged up right now. And so I like Heinicke, he's just going to be running free in the pocket all week. And not to mention their run defense can't stop anything either. So in terms of the nerd ball stats specifically, their pass defense efficiency score is 31.2%. It's second worst in the NFL. I think their run defense score is 30th in the NFL. I mean, this is a front seven and a secondary that Taylor Heinicke is just going to eviscerate. The nice thing is that we might have been concerned, entering the season. The Washington football team defense is also terrible. So, Kansas City is going to be able to score at will. They would anyway, but the fact that Washington is playing terribly, it's just going to crank up the pace of this game. It's going to force Taylor Heinicke to continue to look downfield. And like, if you need a quarterback, Taylor Heinicke is a quarterback one for you this week. Next guy I want to touch on is Robert Woods. And this one is more philosophical than anything that has to do. We'll cover the matchup, but there's this phrase out there called regression. And so you'll hear it, you'll hear positive regression used. For those of you who aren't familiar with this term, we're talking about the mean or the average. So you might hear somebody say, ahead of week 5, Robert Woods was due for positive regression. What that means is that given his usage, his snap share, the number of routes he's running, his target share, his air yard share, he's underperforming, and he was due for a blow up performance. And that's what we saw last week in week 5, 12 catches on 14 targets for 150 yards. I know that it can be tough. It can get scary, especially when you spend, in this case, probably a 4th or 5th round pick on somebody. You're banking on him, maybe even as a wide receiver one, depending on the roster construction that you went with. But regression is real. Yards lead to touchdowns. Like, he didn't score this week, so get ready. Regression is real. And if you see someone who seems like they're underperforming in the box score, but the usage is there, you should either not panic if you have them or target them if you don't. Moving on to guy number 3, Michael Pittman Jr. I've talked about Michael Pittman Jr. a number of times this year, but I don't think that he's getting enough love. So he owns 35.87% of his team's air yard share. That's 16th in the NFL. For those unfamiliar with that term, air yards are the distance between the line of scrimmage, like where the ball is snapped. So the distance that when the quarterback throws the ball from the line of scrimmage to the intended receiver. Now it measures this distance regardless of if the receiver catches it. This is another thing we can use for determining usage, for determining an intended usage. So let's say I run, 5 routes, I get 5 targets. I only catch one of them and it goes for 12 yards, but I had 80 air yards. You look at that at the end of the day and someone's going to go, well, Nick didn't perform very well. He only had 12 yards, and that's fair. But you're also going to see, if you look at the air yards, that the team was trying to give me 80 yards. They wanted to use me badly. Pittman Jr. luckily it's just he's connecting too. His air yard share is also kind of in line with his yardage share, and he finally found the end zone in week 5. I know it was a little bit of a controversial touchdown, but he did it. It counted for us. So hey, we're celebrating that. But what I really like about this is that there isn't really anyone that can compete with Michael Pittman Jr. I know T.Y. Hilton is returning, but I'm not that big on Hilton anymore, and they play different roles anyway. Pittman Jr. is very much an alpha X receiver. T.Y. Hilton is that downfield Z guy. But what I'm super excited about is that they play the Houston Texans this week. Terrible team. San Francisco next week, and Nick Bosa is crushing it. So that's not necessarily going to be an easy one for Carson Wentz to succeed. But in the weeks following, you get Tennessee, the New York Jets, and Jacksonville. Those 3 games, Michael Pittman Jr. might be like a top 12 player at the position by the end of that span. I'm not saying that hyperbolically. Tennessee, last I checked, they're allowing like 40 half-point PPR points to opposing receivers. Yeah, 40, number 1 in the NFL. The Jets can't cover anybody, and their raw data may not be as high. The production may not be as high because teams are able to just run the ball to kill the clock. But the point is, and Jacksonville, like Michael Pittman Jr., I don't think you can buy him low this week because he's hot off an 89-yard, 1 touchdown, 6 catch performance. But if he stumbles after SF in week 7, like target this guy. He's going to be a beast. Okay, player number 3, player number 4. We're kind of sticking with not so much matchup, but just a guy that I want to flag, DeAndre Hopkins. So, excuse me, guys, sorry about that. Like I said, my allergies are out of control. I don't have COVID. I was tested again this week. I'm negative. I'm responsible with that. But anyway, so DeAndre Hopkins, he's not vaccinated to our knowledge. And I'm not here to talk about whether or not I think he should be vaccinated. Here to talk about how that impacts us for fantasy purposes. So if he tests positive and he's unvaccinated, he automatically must self-isolate for 10 days. That means that if he tests positive on a Friday, he's not going to play in the next 2 weeks. If they're playing on, I guess, even if it was Monday night the following week, he wouldn't be allowed to play. Definitely if it's back-to-back Sundays. Now, Hopkins is ill right now. He's sick with something. We don't know what it is, and he hasn't tested positive, so there's no reason to think that it is COVID-19. But I just wanted to flag this because Hopkins is one of the biggest impact players in the league and in your fantasy lineup. And it just something to keep in mind. Your guy could be out for 2 weeks, but again, Hopkins is simultaneously he's one of like 5 players in the NFL who does not have to practice at all and will still go out there for a full complement of snaps. And so even though he has back-to-back DNPs, did not participate in practice Wednesday and Thursday, I'm not worried about him right now. The COVID thing did come up though, just because his teammate Chandler Jones was placed on the COVID reserve list due to I believe it was a positive test, not a close contact. I should confirm that. But Chandler Jones placed on the COVID-19 reserve list earlier this week. I had a tie here for who I'm going to talk about last, but I'll just work both of them in. The second one will come in later on. But guy that I want to flag is named Demetric Felton. So Felton plays for the Cleveland Browns. On Yahoo, he has wide receiver and running back eligibility. Don't know what he is on Sleeper or ESPN, but you all should look. The reason I say this is he's not an athletic specimen, but he's a capable dual threat, and he's good in the open field. He's good on kick returns. Kick returners who perform really well in college have a very long track record of being successful in the NFL, because it's basically what they're able to do one-on-one, like with their body when they're in space carrying the football. Guy who comes to mind, Antonio Brown. There are a number of players we've been able to point to via their return game and whatever they're doing as a running back or receiver and go, that's a guy who the team's going to want to scheme the ball to. Anyway, Demetric Felton, very capable dual threat fill and running back for the Cleveland Browns. Nick Chubb has not practiced on Wednesday or Thursday with a calf injury, and Kareem Hunt did not practice Wednesday or Thursday with wrist and knee injuries. Felton would be the dual threat guy to step in and make some noise if neither one of those can go. And if both of them can't go, then he can get like 20 touches. Dearness Johnson, very slow north-south rusher. He is another name to keep in mind, but Felton is the one that I wanted to flag if you were in need of a running back. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to play for sure, because Chubb and Hunt can still get in. We won't feel nervous about them if they can go full on Friday, but if they're limited, maybe not. Anyway, Demetric Felton, just if you were in need of a running back, and most of us are, go at him. Okay, kicking things off from the top, covering the full Sunday slate. Sunday, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Miami Dolphins at Jacksonville Jaguars. Biggest news here is that Tua Tagovailoa returned to practice this week. He's been designated to return from injured reserve. That doesn't mean that he has been activated to the active roster, but it's good that he returned on Wednesday. That it's putting him on track to play. This is a fantastic matchup for him to return to. Jacksonville Jaguars are very bad. They're allowing 296 passing yards per game, 8th most in the NFL. Their pass defense efficiency rating is 26.7, which is dead last. They are generating somewhat of a pass rush, which would be a problem for the spazzy Jacoby Brissett if he were to play, but we would feel okay about it with Tua. Simultaneously, though, if they're able to get a couple hits on Tua's ribs, where he's injured right now, Brian Flores might not want to put him out there. But right now, I expect Tua to play, and I think that'll be a low end. I have him as a low end quarterback too. He could finish like QB 15 or 16. Wide receivers. Preston Williams. So Preston Williams stepped up in Devontae Parker's absence last week. Devontae Parker practiced all week, but his hamstring was tight late in the week, and so they held him out. He's now on the injury report with both a shoulder and hamstring injury. I don't expect Devontae Parker to play. Will Fuller is on injured reserve still with the broken finger. I expect Preston Williams to operate as the team's X receiver. Still, though, that only means a wide receiver 5 because they have better targets, i.e. Jalen Waddle and Mike Gesicki. Now, I know these two guys flopped last week, and Mike Gesicki, he's not a tight end. He just plays slot, and they're doing that high rotation slot thing with Waddle and Gesicki. Here's why I like them. Jacksonville Jaguars slot cornerback Trey Herndon. We've talked about him in the past, but he is very bad. He was absent to start the season, but he's been active for weeks 4 and 5. In 2 games, he's allowed 10 catches on 11 targets for 112 yards and 1 touchdown. So I'm high on both Waddle and Gesicki. Gesicki's a tight end 1, and Waddle is a high end wide receiver 4. In terms of the backfield, I don't think that I don't think that Myles Gaskin is going to bounce back and have the same week I don't think he's going to build on a strong week that he had last week. I thought it would be Waddle who operated as the outlet guy against the Bucks pass rush. I was wrong. It was Gaskin. I don't think that they're not going to need Gaskin against the Jaguars. They don't have any. Well, okay. Like I said, their pass rush is okay, but I'm not going back to the well with Gaskin as anything other than a running back 4. Malcolm Brown and Salvin Ahmed are going to play. If you want to start one of these guys, do it in DFS. I would not recommend in redraft. Yeah. Jacksonville Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence is killing it. And he started the first 2 games of the year. He only ran a combined 3 times, but over the last 3 weeks 3, 4, and 5, he's gone 6 carries, 27 yards, 8 carries, 36 yards and a touchdown, 7 carries, 28 yards and a touchdown. It's good that he's running in the red zone, or, I think one of them was from 21 yards out or something. But point is, Trevor Lawrence, he's got a nose for the end zone. He's playing very well, and he has established a rushing floor. He's going to be passing against Byron Jones and Xavier Howard, probably the best cornerback duo in the NFL, but they are a little bit banged up. So I'm keeping Lawrence as a high-end quarterback 2 who can finish as a quarterback 1. What went on with the wide receiver core last week? So Urban Meyer, you got to think about where he coached: Florida, Ohio State, Utah, even. He's been a big name, and he's had a lot of good players come to his college programs, and a lot of them are fast. And so he has always been able to have guys who would just blow past other people. He would recruit high quality athletes, and they would just out athlete their competition in college. A lot of them went on to have successful NFL careers, but this was super frustrating. Tavon Austin and Jamal Agnew ended up seeing more targets than Marvin Jones Jr. and Laviska Shenault. And this one is it. So Marvin Jones, Laviska, they're both better football players than Tavon Austin and Jamal Agnew. And I'm struggling to recall. I believe one of these guys was it might have been Jamal Agnew, was like he was a cornerback turned kick returner. I'll see if I have that in my notes here, or if I'm blanking and thinking of somebody else. But the point is, they both run 4.3 40s, and Marvin Jones and Laviska don't. Laviska's kind of slow, and Marvin Jones he's a veteran. He's a jump ball guy. I think Urban Meyer was trying to get his speed stirs the ball because he doesn't know what else to friggin' do, but that's not good for us. So we have a 4-man show in the wide receiver rotation right now. I do think that Marvin Jones and Laviska are going to get more work. We all saw what Laviska did on that. He caught a ball like 19 yards downfield and then brutalized a handful of defenders on the way to a 58-yard total gain. So I'm looking at these two guys as boom bust wide receiver 3s. I have Tavon Austin and Jamal Agnew as boom bust wide receiver 6s. I don't think that they are going to be able to repeat their feat. Dan Arnold walked right in from being traded to them, 2 weeks ago, and he's a focal point of the offense. He had 8 targets last week. If you were in need of a tight end one, like you can fire up Dan Arnold. I think he's a volume-based guy. I don't think it's necessarily talent, but yeah, you could roll with him. In terms of the backfield, so James Robinson has been crushing it over the last 2 weeks. One thing that I did want to flag with this, though, is that Carlos Hyde saw, I believe it was 4 red zone carries, 2 of which came inside the 5-yard line. Luckily, he was unable to convert, and so James Robinson came in and got a touchdown from the 1. Robinson is seeing a lot more work than Carlos Hyde is, but the fact that Urban Meyer scooted Hyde out there in scoring position is still concerning to me. So I'm still ranking James Robinson as a running back 1 this week because the Miami Dolphins are giving up 28.3 half-point PPR points per game to opposing backfields, which is second most in the NFL. Their run defense efficiency metrics by Nerdball put them at 22nd in the NFL. I think that James Robinson is absolutely a top 12 back, but there's still some Hyde shenanigans. Don't be surprised if you see him fall into the end zone and, total 20 yards on the day. Hyde is a touchdown dependent running back 5/6. Kansas City Chiefs at Washington football team. Like we talked about earlier, the WFT are not playing good defense. They are also, awash in controversy as their former GM was shooting back and forth bigoted emails with now resigned head coach John Gruden of the Las Vegas Raiders. I don't know what it'll do to the team. I am concerned with the Raiders and how they're going to be able to game plan, but Washington football team, I think they'll just go out there and get beaten to hell by Patrick Mahomes like they have in the last 4 weeks. Excuse me. So over the last 3 weeks, Josh Allen, Matt Ryan, and Jameis Winston have all thrown for 4 touchdowns against the Washington football team. Mahomes is a top 3 quarterback this week. Travis Kelce, elite tight end 1. You're going to start him, and he could be even more powerful than he was previously because Tyreek Hill has been unable to play this week in practice with a quad contusion. What I mean by this week is Wednesday and Thursday. Contusions are just really bad bruises, and it doesn't seem like that should keep an NFL player out of the lineup, but it can, and it might this week. If he's able to play Friday, then we're not worried about it. He's an elite wide receiver 1, but if there's a chance Tyreek Hill can't play this week. So in that case, Mecole Hardman, you can chase the volume if you want. He saw 12 targets last week. That is 3 more than he'd ever seen in his career. We've been here before with Mecole Hardman, where the dude is a lightning rod on the field, but he isn't very good at playing receiver. So I'm only going to rank him as a boom bust wide receiver 4. Maybe we bump him up to wide receiver 3 if Tyreek Hill is out, but I am not don't bank on Mecole Hardman. He's a Hail Mary guy. You should add him if you need wide receiver help, though. Demarcus Robinson, Byron Pringle, they are wide receiver sixes. Josh Gordon ran 4 routes last week on 9 snaps. He caught his lone target for 11 yards. Bench stash him if you please. He could see some more activity with Tyreek Hill out, but it is clear that they are really going to take it slow with him. Okay, running back situation. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire is now on injured reserve with a sprained MCL. He can come back in 3 to 4, he can come back after he misses 3 games per the rules of injured reserve. MCL sprains of this nature typically result in 3 to 4 weeks missed time. So expect to be able to start Jarrell Williams as the lead back in Kansas City for at least 3 weeks, maybe a month. I've got him as a back end running back 2 this week. I'm not particularly afraid of the matchup. Like I said, Washington football team not playing good football right now. Jerick McKinnon, you can add him. I wouldn't count him as more than a running back 4. He's only really going to be a passing game specialist. Maybe he gets a handful of carries, but I don't think it's going to be too much or anything significant. Elijah McGuire, he is a 4th-year running back. I think he played for the Jets in 2017 and 2018, and he flashed some dual threat ability. He couldn't cut it with the team, though, for whatever reason, and ended up on the Kansas City practice squad, I think, over the last 2 years. McGuire has more upside, in my opinion, than Jerick McKinnon, but McKinnon is ahead of him on the depth chart. So if you have to add one, that is, I would probably go with McKinnon, but McGuire's potential, I think, is greater. Washington football side of things, we already talked in depth about Taylor Heinicke. The dude is a baller, and he's a quarterback 1 this week. Terry McLaurin is going to absolutely destroy this Kansas City Chiefs secondary. He has the 4th highest team air yard share, meaning he personally accounts for 44.91% of the Washington football team's air yards through 5 weeks. Elite wide receiver 1. Kansas City is currently allowing 33.3 half-point PPR points per game to opposing wide receivers. That's 10th most in the NFL. Okay, number 2 and 3 receiver. This got interesting last week. So DeAndre Carter and Adam Humphries, they got a little bit more run because Curtis Samuel re-injured his groin for the 3rd time this season. I don't think that Curtis Samuel should step foot on a football field again until 2022. Per Dr. Edwin Porras, surgery needs to be discussed. What does that mean for Carter and Humphries? Well, Carter was the guy who kind of exploded onto the scene last week. Humphries he was efficient. I think he caught 3 or 4 balls. I'm going to have to go back and double check the box score there because I looks like I don't have that in my notes. But the point is, DeAndre Carter, who runs a 4.3 40, caught 4 passes for what was this? 4 catches. Oh, I see what I did here. So here's what was cool about Carter. Carter got some backfield work too. He had five targets, 1 carry, produced 73 yards from scrimmage, caught 4 passes, and he also accounted for 58 return yards. He's a very good return man. In fact, he's the leading returner in the NFL with 381 return yards to his name. That is 60 yards more than the next best return man, Kansas City's Byron Pringle. If you need a wide receiver 4, DeAndre Carter should be on your radar. Adam Humphries, he's going to, he's a wide receiver 5 and maybe can do a little bit in like a full point PPR format, but I'm not going after him. It's very clear that they manufactured touches for DeAndre Carter in place of Curtis Samuel. Ricky Seals-Jones, tight end, stepped right into the Logan Thomas role, caught 5 passes on 8 targets for 41 yards. We wish he could have scored a touchdown, but hey, we'll take that kind of usage. Sorry guys, like I said, dry throat with the allergies. I'll shut up talking about that though. So in terms of RSJ's matchup though, Kansas City is allowing the 4th most half-point PPR points per game to opposing tight ends, 14.8. Start him as a tight end 1 if you need him. In terms of the running backs, really like Antonio Gibson here. I know he's got the shin splints or stress fractures in his shin, but I'm not worried about it, especially right now. The medical opinion on what that shin issue means for the rest of the season seems to vary pretty wildly. Some people are concerned with him. Some people are just straight up not. Like I said, we're going to have some medical professionals on the show next week and the following week, so we'll pick their brains about what they think about Antonio Gibson. But what we do know right now is that the Kansas City Chiefs run defense is 30th in the NFL in our run defense efficiency metrics. That's fantastic. You should start Antonio Gibson as a running back one this week. He's going to eat. JD McKissic is one of my featured starts of the week this week. This dude is also going to crush it. As mentioned above, Kansas City is 31st in their pass defense metrics, 30th in run defense metrics. JD McKissic plays in both games. With Curtis Samuel out, I do think that he's going to get a little more work. I'm still excited about DeAndre Carter, but JD McKissic has a big time role in this offense. He owns the 2-minute drill. Thank you, Dwayne McFarland. He also owns the long down and distance drill. Thank you again, Dwayne McFarland. I would start JD McKissic across all formats as a running back 3 this week. Los Angeles Rams at New York Giants. Okay, so I think kind of a back-end quarterback one finish is in line here for Stafford. The New York Giants defense is not great, but they do have some solid players. But perhaps most importantly, both the Rams and the Giants are bottom half in the league in terms of offensive plays per game. So I think that Stafford just isn't going to have like a terribly gaudy total, passing total, that is, pass attempts. But again, I don't think he's going to, if he falls off the quarterback one radar, I don't think he's going past quarterback 15. I have him between 10 and 15 this week. Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. We know Cooper Kupp is just going to stay as a wide receiver one because his usage is there and he's that friggin' good. It is possible that the Giants would have number one cornerback James Bradberry try to shadow him, but Bradberry has taken 276 of his 342 2021 snaps on the perimeter this year. So I think he's more of a candidate to man up on Robert Woods than Cooper Kupp. So Cooper Kupp, wide receiver one. I'm still rolling with Robert Woods as a wide receiver two. Again, if his usage in weeks 1 through 4 were hitting, you wouldn't be wondering if you should start him as a wide receiver two. But the usage was there. And the usage was there again last week when they targeted him 14 times. Don't fear the Reaper here. Stick with Robert Woods. He's a wide receiver two. Van Jefferson and Deshaun Jackson are alternating as the downfield Z receiver. They're just one for the other. We have Van Jefferson, who is much younger than Deshaun Jackson, but is not as fast. Roll your dice with this matchup, though. If you have one of these guys, you can start them as a boom bust wide receiver four. The reason that I like it is that New York Giants explosive play rate is 10%, which is tied for 11th in the NFL, meaning 10% of their plays go for explosive pass, or 10% of their completed passes, I think it is, goes for an explosive gain, which I believe is defined as a 20-yard or more passing gain. So yeah, fire these two guys up. They're downfield receivers in deep formats. Okay, don't, if it's standard scoring or non-PPR and you only got like 2 starting receivers, don't start them. But if it's a deep format, yeah, these two guys are good options. Tyler Higbee, typical tight end one. It's a decent matchup. The New York Giants are allowing the 7th most half-point PPR points per game to opposing tight ends, 13.3. But how it goes with like non-elite tight ends that are tight end ones. He could flop, but he could also catch 5 balls for 50 yards and a touchdown. What's going on with the quarterbacks? So under the New York Giants side of things. I totally skipped over Darrell Henderson here. Newsflash, his usage is fantastic, and he's a running back one this week. He is going to smash. Sony Michel, I think I've got him as a running back 4. I am checking running back 38 this week. On to the New York Giants, Daniel Jones and Mike Glennon. So Daniel Jones, there's some goofy stuff going on here. He suffered a concussion last week, right as Joe Judge was talking about how he was not going to be participating in practice on Wednesday. A reporter informed him that Daniel Jones had walked onto the practice field in full pads. Nothing has come of it, so it doesn't look like the team is going to get punished, but he returned officially in a limited capacity to practice on Thursday this week. So I think that Daniel Jones will be back in action, and he's going to be a high-end quarterback 2. He'll probably get it done in the rushing department and could finish as a quarterback 1, but the Rams pass defense is the real deal. If he's inactive, Mike Glennon would be a quarterback 3. On to this jumbled wide receiver core. Kenny Golladay, hyperextended knee, I think it was, is going to be out this week, or very likely going to be out this week. Do not count on him. Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton suffered hamstring injuries. They've missed the last 2 weeks, and Kadarius Toney has balled the hell out as a result. He has seen a team-high 22 targets, caught 16 of them for 279 yards, while getting 2 carries for 8 yards. He's not just lining up as a slot receiver, which is really good. So here, Tony, in a nutshell, is an explosive athlete who was undisciplined in college. He would do silly things, and he basically refused to learn how to run routes properly. He still doesn't look like a good route runner, and he's decided to punch someone in the head while they were wearing a mask in week 5. Or excuse me, not a mask, a helmet, a football helmet. He's still not making great decisions. I don't think that you should bank on him getting ejected, but understand it's in his potential range of outcomes. And he's not developing necessarily as a route runner. Now, that said, he moves in a way that makes everybody else look like they're moving in slow motion. So how was he utilized? Well, he was not just a slot receiver. He lined up, per ProFootballFocus.com, 32 reps in the slot and 32 reps on the outside. He lined up as a tight end once in line. He's playing too well, and he was drafted in the first round this year. The team wants to make themselves look like they know what they're doing, and so they're going to play this guy, even though slot receiver Sterling Shepard and downfield receiver Darius Slayton are coming back in the lineup. Kind of funny because, Tony plays a lot in the slot. He's also very fast, so he's good downfield, so he'll have immediate competition there, but I think that they'll still scheme the ball into his hands on screens, and they'll even get him work in the backfield, especially with Saquon Barkley out. So the way that I'm looking at these guys is Kadarius Toney, volatile wide receiver 3. I think that he can have a good floor, but perhaps, volatile also in the good way. So if you have him, go ahead and start him. I do think that Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton are going to be back this week. They are wide receiver 4s because of Kadarius Toney's emergence. John Ross, not a fantasy factor. Evan Ingram could not do anything, even with all 3 of these starting receivers. The 3 starting receivers were out of the game, and Evan Ingram couldn't do anything. It's not his fault. They're using him near the line of scrimmage. His average intended air yards, I get it, went up to 6 on the season last week, after 3.3 the week before. No, it was 6 last in week 5, but 3.3 on the season before that. Point is, they're not using him properly. So Evan Ingram is just a tight end 2. With Saquon Barkley out, Devontae Booker came in and he handled all of the reps. I was really impressed. I didn't think that he was going to get that kind of a workload, but he saw 16 carries and 4 targets. All of that entire workload came after Barkley left. So it's not that he was being spelled in there before Barkley went out. That's what they gave him. They saddled him up. They wrote him as a bell cow. After Barkley went out, I think it's going to be the same type of thing this week. And I have Booker currently ranked as the running back 23 on this week. He's not a terribly talented player, but he's going to get the volume, and it's actually kind of a friendly matchup because the Rams welcome people to run the football while they pass the ball a lot on offense and run up the score. So yeah, Devontae Booker, totally serviceable back in running back 2. One thing of note that was really cool, per PFF, he had 2 red zone targets and 4 red zone carries, 3 of which came inside the Dallas 5-yard line last week. So that was great. Once they got into scoring position, they went straight to Booker. They gave him 3 carries inside the 5. That's a big deal. So yeah, rock on Devontae Booker. Houston Texans at Indianapolis Colts. Davis Mills, borderline quarterback 2/3, and Brandon Cooks. Cooks, look, sell high on him. He's an okay downfield receiver, and he was getting volume, especially with Tyrod Taylor there, but not as much with Davis Mills. I understand that Indianapolis, they're not very good on defense. They've got some injuries at the cornerback position. I think they're down 2 starting corners, one of them on the perimeter, maybe one on the slot. And so they're allowing the 8th most half-point PPR points per game to opposing wide receivers, 31.5. But you're betting on lightning in a bottle here. I think that you can start Brandon Cooks as a wide receiver 4, but like if he produces, trade him. Try to trade him for a wide receiver 2. People think he's a wide receiver 2. Try to trade him as such. Indianapolis Colts, Carson Wentz, they should pulverize the Texans. So I've got Wentz as a potential top 15 quarterback play this week. Might be the highest ranking he'll have this year. We already touched on Michael Pittman Jr. He's a high-end wide receiver 2. Zach Pascal and Paris Campbell. Oh, was there anything else actually no, there's nothing else there. Yeah. Michael Pittman Jr., high-end wide receiver 2 this week. Zach Pascal. So he has actually taken the slot receiver job from Paris Campbell, and he's going to tee off against Desmond King, who was a beast with the Chargers for a few years, but just is not right now. Through 5 games with Houston, Desmond King has allowed 10 of 13 targets to get through in his slot coverage for 99 yards and 1 touchdown, a passer rating of 123.6 per Pro Football Focus. So I think you can start Zach Pascal as like a pretty safe wide receiver 4. Paris Campbell is a wide receiver 6. Don't start him. T.Y. Hilton might come back this week, designated to return from injured reserve due to the neck injury. He's a volatile wide receiver 5. Downfield guy, yeah. Volatile in his first week back from a neck injury. Okay, on the tight end side of the things, Mo Alley-Cox might actually be separating from Jack Doyle and Kylan Granson, but there are still two viable tight ends on this roster that the coaching staff may choose to roll out there at any given time. So the floor is a trap door with Mo Alley-Cox. What we're seeing with Mo Alley-Cox is just increase in snap share, routes, and targets, that kind of a thing. Basically all goodness in the passing game. Houston is allowing 17.2 half-point PPR points per game to opposing tight ends. That is 2 more half-point PPR points more than any other team in the NFL. So if you need a tight end, Mo Alley-Cox is a great place to start. Again, 0 floor, but would you be upset with him scoring 17.5 points for you? No, you wouldn't. Mo Alley-Cox, totally fine tight end 1 streamer. Definitely fire him up in daily fantasy. Running back side of things, Jonathan Taylor dominated last week, but Marlon Mack is also getting work. And so he's not necessarily taking work from Taylor. He's mostly nuking Nyheim Hines' value, and I don't understand why. On the Taylor side of things, he had the highest route run total, 16, I think, on the season, and he had, Jonathan Taylor had the best receiving game usage we've seen since his explosion in week 1. He ran 16 routes. He had 4 targets. And he took one of those for 76 yards, a 76-yard touchdown. He's got a big lead in the carry department. I'm looking at Jonathan Taylor as a locked-in running back 1 this week against one of the NFL's worst defenses. Nyheim Hines, though, unfortunately, is a borderline running back 3/4 now because Marlon Mack is getting work, and he's taking it. If you go compare their snap share, when Marlon Mack gets snaps, it comes straight out of Nyheim Hines' pocket, and it's really unfortunate, but that's the name of the game. Marlon Mack, you could fire him up in DFS. This could be a garbage time game. Don't start him in a redraft, but you could fire him up in DFS. Cincinnati Bengals at Detroit Lions. Okay, so Joe Burrow went to the hospital last week for a throat contusion after the game. He has been okay in practice thus far. Zach Taylor, we know, likes to kind of dial things back when his quarterback is injured. He's going to be using hand signals, I guess, to hike the ball and to call plays. I don't know. We'll see how this all pans out. Great thing, though, the Detroit Lions are terrible. Trey Flowers, their best defensive lineman, I think he's nursing an injury. I think he's going to play and be fine, but he is battling a knee injury. They're down 2 starting cornerbacks, most notably Jeff Okudah for the season, and they just cut Jamie Collins, who is their best linebacker. So Joe Burrow, quarterback, he's probably quarterback 13 on the week. Jamar Chase, wide receiver 1 in fantasy football. Stop questioning it. He owns 47.68% of the team's air yard share, second most in the NFL. Fire up Jamar Chase as a wide receiver 1. Stop thinking about it. T. Higgins is back, which means it's tough stuff on Tyler Boyd. I think these guys can get the job done via efficiency as high floor wide receiver 3s because it is the Detroit Lions, but they're not getting a lot of volume. So yeah, only high floor wide receiver 3s. Auden Tate, DFS only. Don't start him in a redraft. Don't you dare. CJ Uzoma, his value has been nuked with the return of T. Higgins to the lineup, who had a shoulder injury. Backfield got turned on its head over the last 2 weeks. So Joe Mixon battling an ankle sprain. The team is moronically playing him, but he made it through last week unscathed. So okay. Samaje Perine took a target to the house last week, scored a touchdown on it, then tested positive for COVID. So now he's out. Joe Mixon likely goes back to a 20-touch workload, and Chris Evans factors in as a passing game specialist. I've got Joe Mixon as a back-end running back 1, playing less than 100%, but it is a good matchup. Chris Evans is a running back 4 with RB3 upside in full point PPR leagues. On the Detroit Lions side of the ball, Jared Goff. Okay, so here's the thing. In terms of this matchup, it's probably going to be a low volume outing. Now, the Lions have played a lot of offensive snaps, but that's because they're losing a lot of the time. They've lost, I think, every game this season. So We don't know how many snaps or how many passes he's really going to throw. The Bengals defense is really only getting pass rush production out of 2 defensive ends, but hey, that's 2 more than some teams get. So they also are blitzing linebacker Logan Wilson and slot cornerback Mike Hilton. Point is, Jared Goff, he's going to know where the pressure is coming from, but the pressure is going to be coming. So he's a mid to high quarterback too, with some streaming viability in week 6. Running back side of things. So perimeter receiver Quintez Cephas ended up on injured reserve after breaking his collarbone. Kaderil Hodge replaced him. Kaderil Hodge is more of an athlete than he is an NFL receiver, so I'm not looking to add him for redraft purposes. The Detroit Lions are getting hammered by the Cincinnati Bengals. So Mike Hilton, we've talked about him before, just did. Very good blitzer. He's a very good gadget guy for the defense. He's also a very bad cover corner. So slot receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown, who Jared Goff was saying needs to be more involved in the passing attack week to week. He is now on the streaming radar, or like a wide receiver 4. And Khalif Raymond, who plays on the perimeter and in the slot 35% of the time, is also a wide receiver 4 this week. I don't think Kaderil Hodge is going to do much of anything. TJ Hawkinson battling a knee injury, and he is running fewer routes than he was at the beginning of the season. I am removing him from the tight end 1 ranks this week. I think that he's going to have to help block Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard. So yeah, I am not looking. I would start Mo Alley Cox over TJ Hawkinson. I know that's crazy, but that's what I would do. Also, just monitor TJ Hawkinson's ability to practice, because I think it's been kind of wishy-washy with the knee injury. He may not even be able to go. I think he will, but I think he's going to have to block a lot. As far as the running backs go, so Jamal Williams went from a limited participant with a hip injury on Wednesday to a did not participate on Thursday. That's bad. I don't expect him to play now. He may be able to turn things around, but a midweek downgrade is really, really bad. What does that mean for Deandre Swift? Well, Deandre Swift has 52 carries, 3 behind Williams on the season, but he also has 35 targets, which are number 1 on the team. Cincinnati is uniquely suited to be pummeled by him. They are allowing 8.2 running back receptions per game, second most in the NFL, and 50 running back receiving yards per game. I've got Swift with Williams in as a borderline running back 1/2, and without him, oh man, he probably goes up to running back 6, maybe even running back 5. Green Bay Packers at Chicago Bears. So this one, the Bears have a decent defense. It's a little banged up. Interior defensive lineman Akeem Hicks, who can get after the passer, is injured, and I've got his, he's got a groin injury, and he has played just 1 snap over the last 2 weeks. So and he started this week not practicing. So I don't think that Akeem Hicks is going to play. Khalil Mack is dealing with a foot and a rib injury. He's going to play because he's Khalil Mack and he's just a beast. But yeah, he's playing banged up. So what I like to do with this, though, even though they still have Robert Quinn that can get after the passer. In 2 games against the Chicago Bears last season, Rodgers posted very similar numbers: 21 of 29 for 211 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 19 of 24 for 240 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He finished those 2 outings as a quarterback 4 and the quarterback 7, respectively. Aaron Rodgers is a mid-range quarterback 1 against the division rivals, Chicago Bears. Davonte Adams, he's an elite wide receiver 1, starting him every week. Randall Cobb, Allen Lazard, Amari Rodgers are all bad NFL players. Amari Rodgers because he's a rookie, the other 2 because they're not good. Well, Randall Cobb's old, okay. But they're going to be covered by people named Kendall Vindor and Duke Shelley, who I've never heard of before. So you can start these guys as boom bust wide receiver 6s. I'm not recommending it, but like single game DFS tournament, yeah, Amari Rodgers, sure, go for it. Fire him up. Mercedes Lewis is now getting receiving usage. So Robert Tonyan, who was already a tight end 2 in fantasy football, is now definitely a tight end 2. I'm not starting either one of these guys. It was possible in week 4 that AJ Dillon's sharp increase in both snaps and touches was due to game script. I mean, it was partially due to game script, but he kept a pretty decent snap share and had a little bit of standalone usage last week in week 5. And the team keeps talking about how they want to throw him the ball more. So what does that mean for Aaron Jones? Well, it means that Aaron Jones is more of a top 15 running back than he's a top 5 running back right now. The Chicago Bears front 7 is decent. Again, it's banged up. He might be able to shoot through the hole with Akeem Hicks out of there. So Aaron Jones can still totally finish as a running back 1. You should not bench him. but you might need to dial back expectations a little bit because it does look like AJ Dillon has forced a timeshare. I am ranking AJ Dillon as a mid-range RB3 this week. Chicago Bears, Justin Fields. Okay, guys, so here's the deal. Over the last 2 weeks with offensive coordinator Bill Lazor calling plays instead of idiot head coach Matt Nagy, the Chicago Bears have run the football, they have thrown the football on just 36% of their first half early downs. That is the most in the NFL, I think by 2 percentage points, maybe one. There's a couple outliers down at the bottom, but the point is the modern NFL team is throwing at about 54%, not 36 on first half early down. So that's really bad. And it's very difficult for a quarterback. When you do that, you might be able to quote unquote protect the young quarterback from making mistakes, but you are forcing him into situations where he has to throw the ball against third down pass defense personnel. That's not a good strategy, but it's what we're dealing with. On the bright side, the Green Bay will be playing, the bright side, it's a bummer for the defenders, but the Green Bay Packers are going to be playing without Jair Alexander and Zadarius Smith, one cornerback, the other a defensive end. I've got Justin Fields again as volatile quarterback 2, but he could finish as a quarterback 3, no problem. Don't start him. You don't want to bank on him right now. As far as the wide receivers go, so this is a big old bummer. So Darnell Mooney, downfield receiver, because of the way that Justin Fields plays, he looks downfield a lot. And so Darnell Mooney is now the 1A, 1B, wherever you want to put him, to Allen Robinson instead of the number 2. Big bummer, though, for Allen Robinson. Back-to-back did not participate in practice due to an ankle injury. I'm not counting on Allen Robinson to play. If he gets a limited participation, he may play, but the data on those guys, and y'all need to be following Dr. Edwin Porras. I got to get that R down. Dr. Edwin Porras of fantasypoints.com. You need to be following his work. It is fantastic. What I have gleaned from studying the data that he's put out on DNP limited participation on Friday is that the players are really volatile. You really need to get in a full participation on Friday for us to feel good about starting him. So if he gets in full participation, you can start Allen Robinson as a volatile wide receiver 3, but if he's active, oh man. Okay, so if it's limited participation, he's probably like a borderline wide receiver 3 / wide receiver 4. If he can go full on Friday, then wide receiver 3, again, without Jair Alexander, like Allen Robinson could run wild, but so could Darnell Mooney. So Mooney, kind of a boom bust. Let's see here. How do I have him? Robinson, high-end wide receiver 3. If he participates in practice in full capacity on Friday. If limited, he's a wide receiver 3 / 4. Darnell Mooney is a probably back-end wide receiver 3 if Allen Robinson is active, and a high-end wide receiver 3. Yeah, you just flip-flop them. That's what you do, depending on if Allen Robinson is available. Jakeem Grant, Marquise Goodwin, no thank you. Don't even think about it. Cole Kmet, tight end 2, bench stash. Running backs, wow. Okay, so Damien Williams and Khalil Herbert. Lots to dissect here. We're going to do it quickly. Damien Williams ended up keeping the lead running back job as we thought, or rather getting the lead running back job with David Montgomery on the shelf. But so he had 16 carries and he caught 2 of 3 targets for 20 yards. Now, Khalil Herbert outsnapped him 53-48 and outcarried him with 18 carries. They actually each had 18 touches. Think about it like that. And then Damien Williams today, while I was on a walk with the dog, tested positive for COVID-19. So Khalil Herbert. Now, it's possible for Damien Williams to clear the COVID protocol. If he is vaccinated, I don't know if he is. We should find that out. If he's vaccinated, all he has to do is turn in back-to-back negative PCR tests and be asymptomatic, and he can play this week. If he's not vaccinated, he's out. Don't even think about it. Like it's 10-day minimum window. Khalil Herbert, though, Khalil Herbert is a back-end running back too. Even if Damien Williams is active, he's going to get work. If Damien Williams is inactive, as I think he will be, then Herbert moves up to a high-end running back too. I will check the ranks for you guys right now. I have got Khalil Herbert as the running back 15, and that is with the expectation that Damien Williams does not play. If Williams plays, He is a mid-range running back 2, and Khalil Herbert is a back-end running back 2. Again, the Green Bay Packers are a really bad team. Their defense is really bad, so I'm not afraid of them at all. Los Angeles Chargers at Baltimore Ravens. This one should be an absolute scoring fest, even with the Chargers' stout defense. But on the Chargers side of the football, Justin Herbert is an elite quarterback 1 every single week. The Ravens are dealing with some bummer injuries at cornerback, and Herbert's going to pick on him. It's going to be juicy. Mike Williams, Keenan Allen. So I'm actually going to check this live, but Mike Williams and Keenan Allen would both be wide receiver 1s this week. I think Mike Williams has sufficiently moved ahead of Keenan Allen in the pecking. I mean, they're kind of flip-flopping, but he is, I think, the primary read. Checking the injury report now, though, this is a real bummer. Mike Williams failed to practice on Wednesday and Thursday due to a knee injury. If Williams is active, then I'm rolling with him still as a top 15 wide receiver, like at worst. But if he's inactive, then Keenan Allen to the moon as probably a top 5 wide receiver 1. If Williams is active, I think Keenan's like wide receiver 13 or 14. The thing, though, is that he gets to tee off against slot cornerback Tavon Young, who is very, very promising, but he suffered a torn ACL on the same ACL in his first 4 seasons. I think he's 5th or 6th year in the NFL right now, and he really has not recovered from it. It's a huge bummer, but yeah, Keenan Allen should be able to take advantage of that outing. So yeah, back end. You start both of these guys, you're going to be really happy. Jalen Guyton is just running cardio on the exterior or on the perimeter, and Josh Palmer is not a fantasy factor. Jared Cook continues to get the job done when he sees volume come his way, but Donald Parham is making way too much noise. Over the last 2 weeks, he's caught 4 of 5 targets for 46 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 2-point conversion. I'm telling you guys, Donald Parham is the real friggin' deal. Baltimore is allowing 15.3 half-point PPR points per game to opposing tight ends, 2nd most in the NFL. If you are in need of a streaming tight end, Donald Parham is a great option. I would start Donald Parham over TJ Hawkinson this week. Jared Cook is a high-end tight end too. Running back Austin Eckler, I think I've got him as like the running back 4. He's going to absolutely shred the Baltimore Ravens front 7. They are allowing 25.8 half-point PPR points per game to opposing running backs, 6th most in the NFL, and they are specifically built to be pummeled by dual threat running backs. They're allowing 68.4 running back receiving yards per game. That is 2nd most in the NFL. Austin Eckler to the moon. Josh Kelly ran ahead of Larry Roundtree as the running back 2 last week, but Justin Jackson was out because of a groin injury, and Justin Jackson has since logged 2 limited practice participations this week. So I think Justin Jackson returns to RB2 duties. I am taking solace in the fact that Joshua Kelly was able to get ahead of Larry Roundtree. I wish Larry Roundtree all the best, but he is as athletic as an offensive lineman, and it's hard to play running back with that kind of athleticism. Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson, he was out with an illness in practice today. We don't know what it is. Hopefully it's not COVID. He really should not be like able to get COVID at this point. The natural antibody rates from getting COVID are like pretty friggin' significant, and he somehow managed to get it twice. So I would be shocked if this is COVID-19 for a 3rd time. I think he'll play, and I think that'll be an elite wide receiver 1. So yeah, he's the MVP front runner right now. On the wide receiver front, so Hollywood Brown is crushing it. He scored touchdowns in 4 of 5 games, cleared 90 yards in 3 of 5 games. He's an every week wide receiver 2, even in a tough matchup against a good Los Angeles Chargers cornerback core. The curveball here is that Sammy Watkins has been unable to practice this week due to a thigh injury that knocked him out of last week's contest. So he's registered back-to-back, did not participate designations on Wednesday and Thursday. I don't think that Sammy Watkins plays. Now, what does that mean? Rashad Bateman is eligible to be activated from, I think it's injured reserve, not PUP. He could start. I would have Bateman as a volatile wide receiver 4, just because he's going to be debuting. Offensive coordinator Greg Roman said that they're going to put him on a snap count to start the season. That makes a lot of sense. He's coming off core muscle surgery. That's no joke. But if Bateman's available in your league, you should start him, you should add him now. And if he's active, you could start him as a wide receiver 4. Devon Duvernay, though, dude is an absolute beast. He's so fast and he gets action in the return game. So if your league rewards return yards, then, hey, all the more power to him. I think Duvernay can get some work done in the slot. Now, Marquise Brown is running routes in the slot and on the perimeter, but Duvernay, he's a wide receiver 4 as well, assuming Sammy Watkins is out. Tight end Mark Andrews, 36.2 half-point PPR points. Scored in week 5. That was 12 more than the rest of the field. Tight ends are just pummeling the Chargers, which I'm surprised by because they have Derwin James back there, but they're allowing 14.8 half-point PPR points per game to the position, tied for 4th most in the NFL. Mark Andrews is an elite tight end 1. As far as the running backs go, Latavius Murray led the backfield with 49 snaps and 8 touches last week. It's a total minefield. I'm not starting any of these dudes. I have Latavius Murray ranked as a running back 4 because the Chargers are allowing the 7th most half-point PPR points per game to opposing running backs, 25.3. But yeah, he's like a borderline running back 3/4, and that's only because there are 4 teams on bye this week, and I'd be ranking Michael Carter ahead of him. I'd probably rank Ty Johnson ahead of him. I would rank Cordell Patterson and Mike Davis ahead of him. You get the picture. Minnesota Vikings at Carolina Panthers. This is a get-right spot for Kirk Cousins. Cousins flopped last week, but it was mostly just because of game script. He was really efficient. I think he was throwing 6% completion percentage above expectation. They just got up and they held the lead. I think it was against Detroit. I have to double check that, but yeah, they got up, they held the lead, and that was that. They opted to ride Alexander Madison's legs. He is a high-end quarterback 2 for week 6. Okay, Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. So Jefferson suffered an ankle injury and Adam Thielen suffered a foot injury. I believe, neither one of them were able to practice this week on Wednesday or Thursday. If they're able to go, I've got Justin Jefferson as a wide receiver 1 still because I've got him as a wide receiver 1, probably back end wide receiver 1 more than an elite wide receiver 1, but a wide receiver 1. I've got Adam Thielen as a wide receiver 2. If one of them's not able to play, then the other guy's going to see like 5 more targets. We're all excited. Here's the thing though, Carolina Panthers defensive backcourt is improving as time goes on. AJ Boye is off suspension. He's played very well through, I think, 2 contests. Trade acquisition, in-season trade acquisition, CJ Henderson is getting more work. He's playing all right. Dante Jackson is playing okay. They're not going to have Stephon Gilmore this week. They'll have him next week, though, so we'll talk about that. But the point is, the Carolina Panthers defensive back group is significantly improving. And it's not great that these 2 guys are banged up. If they can't go, D.D. Westbrook, because of the fact that wide receiver KJ Osborne and tight end Tyler Conklin could not separate from each other as the number 3 passing game target outside of the running back, I know. D.D. Westbrook has taken over as a full-time slot receiver, according to the data from last week. What does that mean? Westbrook, okay, if Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen are active, Westbrook and Osborne are like volatile wide receiver 5s. If one of them are inactive or both of them are inactive, they probably move up to the wide receiver 4 range. But again, kind of a tough matchup. Tyler Conklin, tight end 2. If that duo of Jefferson and Thielen are absent, Conklin moves into the tight end 1 territory, specifically because I think he's going to get loaded up in scoring position with targets. We've kind of seen that where, like, if, Dalvin Cook's out, they can throw some more his way inside the 5 or in the end zone, whatever. We're looking for gold in a pile of dirt here with tight ends. And so Conklin, if those 2 guys are out, maybe a tight end 1. What's going on with the running back situation? So Dalvin Cook is battling a high ankle sprain, syndesmotic ankle sprain. They're very painful. I have suffered them. He was a full participant in practice on Thursday, but here's the thing. He's talking to the media and he is saying that he is dealing with this injury. Now, okay, it hasn't been acknowledged that it's a high ankle sprain, but I've had a number of physical therapists watch or I have read the work of a number of physical therapists who have watched the injury video, and it's clearly a high ankle sprain. So Dalvin Cook, if he's active, I mean, it's a decent matchup. So he's going to be like a volatile top 15 running back. If active, Madison, if Dalvin Cook is active, Then Alexander Madison is running back 4. Here's the deal, though. Madison is dealing with a shoulder injury now. They rested him in practice on Wednesday. He got unlimited work on Thursday, so he should be fine, but that is now a factor. If Dalvin Cook is out, then Alexander Madison is a locked-in running back 1. Sam Darnold and the Panthers. So their pass rush is decent, but their cornerback group is abysmal. So I'm still keeping Sam Darnold as a quarterback 1. They do have some protection issues, but maybe what that means is that it flushes him from the pocket more and he scrambles for a touchdown. Startup Sam Darnold as a quarterback 1. DJ Moore's an every week wide receiver 1, and this is going to be a fireworks show. I'm very excited for that. Robbie Anderson and Terrace Marshall. What is going on with downfield receiver Robbie Anderson and Terrace Marshall? Well, Robbie Anderson's getting the work. It's just they're having trouble connecting for whatever reason. Terrace Marshall, we got too excited for him at the beginning of the season, but he has seen a decent snap share increase over the last 2 weeks, so we like that. Perimeter cornerbacks of the Minnesota Vikings, Patrick Peterson and Rashad Breeland, are allowing NFL passer ratings per ProFootballFocus.com of 122.3 and 147.2. I like those odds for Robbie Anderson. They have been tagged for long gains, that perimeter cornerback duo. So I think you can stick with Robbie Anderson as a borderline wide receiver 3 / wide receiver 4, but I think he can finish as a solid wide receiver 3. In terms of Terrace Marshall, he's running full-time in the slot, and Mackenzie Alexander is just getting slashed in the slot. So fire him up as a upside wide receiver 5. Tommy Tremble, just a tight end. Tommy Tremble is a tight end 2 bench stash. Christian McCaffrey, huge bummer here, you guys. So he's dealing with a hamstring injury. He goes limited practice participation. So he was practicing last week. He goes limited practice participation. And he didn't play in last week's game. Limited practice participation on Wednesday, but then was downgraded to a did not participate on Thursday. I fear the worst that means he had a flare-up or a setback. Hopefully it's something that they can treat and it's not a big deal. I kind of don't want him to play this week. I think he's going to miss this week. Midweek downgrades are so bad because it usually means something went wrong. What could this mean for McCaffrey's return window? I don't know. We're going to have to continue to study the literature. I highly recommend Dr. Edwin Porras of fantasypoints.com. He did a specific hamstring strain piece in August. Go back and read that. If you have any questions, it will cover the full timeline of the recovery timeline with re-injury rates and what that means for McCaffrey. I don't think he's playing this week. He might play in week 7, but with the setback, I kind of think that it might be week 8. I'm double checking their schedule at this moment just to find out when their bye week. Okay, so their bye week's not till week 13, so that we don't have to be concerned that they might play it safe, so to speak, and bench him, for an extra week here. So I'm thinking he doesn't play week 6, probably not week 7, but maybe 8. And that's only because I think that he suffered a setback. If he didn't suffer a setback, he could play this week, and he'll definitely play next week. What does that mean for Chuba Hubbard and Royce Freeman, though? Not Rodney Smith. So in week 4, Chuba Hubbard was the lead back, and they brought in 6-year collegiate running back Rodney Smith. I think he saw 5 targets, caught all 5 of them when they were trying to catch up. Evidently, they didn't like what they saw, though, because he was relegated to the number 3 running back duties behind Royce Freeman, who did his Royce Freeman thing, which means he didn't really do anything. He got a handful of touches, and he didn't do well with them. Chuba Hubbard, though, saw a meaningful increase in his passing game usage. So Hubbard, this was great. So actually, he saw a meaningful increase across the board. In week 4, when he was the starter, he saw 13 carries and 2 targets. Week 5, though, 24 carries and 6 targets. That is big time. Royce Freeman got 3 carries, took him for 2 yards, and caught 1 of his 2 passes for 6 yards. He's not a factor for us at all right now. I've got Chuba Hubbard as a running back 2, and I'm kind of excited about it. Minnesota Vikings stud defensive tackle Michael Pierce got an elbow injury, failed to play last week because of it, and Deandre Swift ran for 4.6 yards per attempt, while Jamal Williams ran for 4.4. The Minnesota Vikings defensive front is stout, but Michael Pierce's absence hurts. So Chuba Hubbard, I think he's a pretty safe running back 2 this week. I've got him probably as the running back 20. As far as Royce Freeman goes, like back end running back 5, waiting for my notes to reload at this point. So that's great. But yeah, I have just double checking the list for y'all right now. Royce. Yeah, I've got Royce Freeman as the running back 48. So yeah, you're not starting him. You could bench stash him if you want, if this is a setback for Christian McCaffrey, but I'm not excited about him at all. On to the afternoon games. Sunday, 1:05 p.m. to 1:25 p.m. PST. Arizona Cardinals at Cleveland Browns. Kyler Murray showed up with a shoulder injury, although the film seemed to suggest that it was a bicep injury. Who knows, though? Listed as a shoulder. He practiced in a limited capacity on Wednesday and Thursday, so I'm not worried about him missing this game, though. He's going to play. Cleveland Browns defense is very, very good. If anything, though, sometimes with good edge rushers like Myles Garrett, Murray might get sacked a few times, but he's also probably going to get flushed from the pocket, and we like that for scrambly QBs. I think that fantasy managers should expect closer to a top 5 finish than a top 1 or 2 finish, but he's still an elite option at the position either way. We already chopped it up with DeAndre Hopkins. He is an elite wide receiver 1. He is ill. We don't know what it is. We don't have any reason to believe that it is COVID. If it is, he's out for 2 games. But yeah, he's an elite wide receiver 1. AJ Green had a bit of a down week last week. He posted wide receiver 2 finishes in weeks 3 and week 4. I've got him as a mid-tier wide receiver 3. The injury that we need to talk about for this one is tight end Max Williams. So Williams is I believe it was a 7-year veteran. He was drafted very highly, thought that he was going to do a lot, but he ended up being more of a blocker than anything else. I wonder if the absence of Max Williams could lead to a more stable target share for AJ Green. Now, AJ Green was already seeing a pretty decent target share. I believe he had like 6 targets through the first 4 weeks of the season, and then finished with 2 last week. I'm not too worried about it, but it is a decently tough matchup. I think he's still a wide receiver 3 candidate for redraft purposes, though. Rondale Moore and Christian Kirk. So Christian Kirk maintained a higher snap share than Rondale Moore did last week, 54% to 48% last week, but that was a season low for Christian Kirk and a season high for Rondale Moore. Moore ran more routes, though, 20 to 18 per ProFootballFocus.com, and he also out-targeted Kirk 6 to 5. Could this be fallout from Max Williams? Yeah, maybe. Could this also be fallout from Chase Edmonds? Suffering entering the game with a shoulder injury? Yeah, maybe. But Rondale Moore is also just really friggin' good and can kind of do things with his 4.3 speed. I mean, dude jumps like a 42-inch vertical. He is enticing upside, and I think Cliff Kingsbury he notices it. So what are we looking at with a slot receiver specific matchup, though? So both of these guys are playing the majority of their snaps in the slot. Christian Kirk is at a rate of 91%. Rondale Moore is 77%. I really like Rondale Moore's odds to rip off a couple chunk gains, though, against Brown slot cornerbacks, Troy Hill. Hill is big, and he is relatively fast in the short area, but he does not have top end speed, and I think that Moore can burn him. Notably, Rondale Moore's backfield usage has also increased over the last few weeks as well. Week 3, he saw 1 carry. Week 4, he saw 2. And guess what he saw in week 5? 3. He took those 3 for 38 yards. And I think he's also cycling in as a return man as well from time to time, not as a featured return guy, but just as, so from time to time, he's getting some return work. He's returned at least 1 punt or run or 1 kick in every game this season. So if you are in a league that rewards even like 25 yards, per point, that's still something to just make note of. But regardless, you're in a league that awards 1 point for 10 rushing yards, and he got 38 of those last week. So Rondale Moore, I'm rolling with him as a wide receiver 2/3. I think he can get the job done against Troy Hill. I'm rolling with Christian Kirk as a wide receiver 3/4, as he's also going to get to go up against Troy Hill. Troy Hill's not a pushover, but I think that both of these guys can kind of get the job done there. We'll leave it at that. The Rondale Moore talk always goes deep. Demetrius Harris is now filling in for Max Williams. He's only really a viable starter in tight end or 2 tight end leagues in with tight end premium scoring. Running backs James Conner and Chase Edmonds. Edmonds was severely limited with his shoulder injury, and James Conner did not run very well in place of Edmonds as the lead back. Now Edmonds was active, but Conner had the backfield lead in carries. He took 10 for just 29 yards and 1 touchdown. That's always kind of been the issue with him. His body is sadly kind of sapped of its playmaking ability due to the chemotherapy he suffered in college, or that saved his life in college, but very likely has some connective tissue issues. Point is, he ran as the lead back. He did find the end zone. We're happy with that. He didn't get a lot of receiving game work, though, which is a bummer. He only saw 1 target. The hope was that he was going to see a sharp increase in targets if Edmonds was limited. Cliff Kingsbury, no doubt, wants Chase Edmonds back as soon as possible, but he does have Rondale Moore, who he can line up back there, and so I think that they'll be able to slow play it with Chase Edmonds. Their run defense score is really good, though. The Browns, that is, their run defense efficiency mark is 8th best in the NFL. So I don't know that this is going to be a gaudy total for or gaudy a bountiful output for Conner in week 6. Yeah, they're allowing the fifth fewest half-point PPR points per game to opposing backfields. Excuse me. Now, the thing with those stats, though, this actually is one that I wanted to highlight. So if you're looking on like a fantasy app, you might see that this kind of has a red light as a matchup, but it lies a little bit. And here's why. Week 1, the Cleveland Browns faced Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and he was not getting enough work. He was getting like interior run or stretch runs and not getting enough passing game work. Week 2, they played the Texans, who, it's a clown car of running backs there. Week 3, Dave Montgomery, who they did play well against. Wide receiver 4 was an injured version of Dalvin Cook. And then week 5, Austin Eckler went for 119 yards from scrimmage, 5 catches and 3 touchdowns. If you want to take one of those touchdowns off because of the goofy thing, sure. Okay, great. He only scored 2 then. He still scored 2. So the point is, capable backs can get the job done here, especially in good offenses. I think that the opportunities will be there for Conner to find the end zone again. So I've got him as a mid to low running back 2. I've got Edmonds as a high end running back 3. I do expect Edmonds to stay on a snap count, though, while his shoulder is on the mend. What's going on with Baker and Mayfield? So Mayfield, excuse me, guys, I'm so sorry. As we mentioned earlier on in the podcast, defensive lineman Chandler Jones of the Arizona Cardinals is on the COVID reserve list. He was placed there on Monday, so he has ample time to clear. But if he is symptomatic, then he's not going to play. That would be great for Baker Mayfield because Chandler Jones currently accounts for 16 of Arizona's 45 quarterback pressures. That 45 number is 9th lowest in the league right now, so they are struggling to generate pressure and would really struggle if Chandler Jones sits. So I have Baker Mayfield tentatively as a quarterback 2 this week. Now their cornerbacks, Robert Alford and Byron Murphy, are playing very well. They've also got a very good safety in Budda Baker, but I'm going to check the injury report. I know, actually, Budda Baker is very healthy and he's playing very well. Cornerbacks, Byron Murphy and Robert Alford playing very well, though, as well. So Baker Mayfield kind of is a mid-range quarterback 2. If Chandler Jones is inactive, he has a chance to finish in the top 15. Add Jarvis Landry. He's not playing this week. He probably will return next week from his MCL sprain. Add him now if he is available. As far as the wide receiver group goes outside of that, Odell Beckham Jr., Rashard Higgins, Donovan Peoples-Jones, they are all volatile wide receiver 4s who can finish anywhere between the top 36 and top 60. What is going on for Odell Beckham Jr. and Baker Mayfield? I don't know. It's more, I think, an indictment of Baker Mayfield than it is Beckham, but if they're not getting it done, we don't know what to think here. Everybody got in on the fun last week when they scored over 40 points, except for Odell Beckham Jr. I still am going to rank Beckham Jr. ahead of these guys, but wide receiver 4s across the board for me. I'm not going to chase the big bad outing that David Njoku had last week. 7 of 7 targets for 149 yards and 1 touchdown. Probably going to be the best game he ever plays as a Brown, maybe ever in his career. His contract is up at the end of this season, so he could go somewhere else and plays the number 1 tight end there. But he left Austin Hooper and Harrison Bryant in the dust. I don't expect that to be the case because those guys were still running a lot of, they were playing on a lot of snaps. They were running some routes. But the Arizona Cardinals, with a first-round pick from 2 years ago, linebacker Isaiah Simmons, is turned into a great coverage linebacker. And I mean, there were some talk that he could be played at safety in the NFL. So that's no surprise. And they've got Budda Baker, phenomenal safety, working over the top. So Arizona Cardinals allowing 4.0 half-point PPR points to opposing tight ends. That is the fewest in the NFL. I am not starting a single Browns tight end in redraft formats. You can fire up David Njoku in daily fantasy if you please. What's going on with the running backs? We already kind of touched on this. Nick Chubb, calf injury, Kareem Hunt, wrist and knee injury. Neither of them have practiced on Wednesday or Thursday. Demetri Felton is the number 1 running back there. Well, he has wide receiver and running back eligibility in Yahoo formats. Will also potentially return kicks. This dude could be a wide receiver. This guy could be a wide receiver 3. He could be a running back 3 in fantasy across all formats. If both of Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are inactive, he also might end up as a back end running back 3 ranking, even if only one of them is inactive, especially if it's Kareem Hunt that's inactive. D'Ernest Johnson, running back 5, maybe running back 6. He's a north-south plotter. I'm not that into him, but if both Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are inactive, D'Ernest Johnson could be a running back 4. Las Vegas Raiders at Denver Broncos. An overarching theme that I want to hit on here is that John Gruden and his bigoted emails were outed sufficiently. I think that they're, just as a commentary aside, there are a lot of people who still deserve intense scrutiny for their roles in this fiasco. Bruce Allen, I know he's out of football, but I don't think there's any way that Dan Snyder didn't know about this. And I think that the team should be taken from him. Also want to call out Adam Schefter here, who evidently was sending press releases to Bruce Allen and referring to him as Mr. Editor in the early 2010s. That is pay-to-play journalism. You are buddying up with your source. And I know that there was some commentary from some fantasy analysts like, what else would you expect? That's how you do access journalism. It's our job as people in the journalism industry. I'm a fantasy football analyst. You can count me there if you please. But it's also our job as consumers to hold these people accountable when they know that they did something wrong or that something wrong is going on and they choose not to report on it. If you think that Adam Schefter did not know that these kinds of things were being said, reevaluate. I think that you're wrong. I think that he did, and he chose not to say anything. For that, he deserves our ire. Now, how does this apply to the Las Vegas Raiders? Special teams coach Rich Bisaccia has been promoted to interim head coach. A cursory glance at Bisaccia's history is that he has operated as an assistant head coach for, I think it was 4 or 5 NFL franchises. He has done the same thing at the college level too. I am sure he is a capable leader in the locker room. I don't know how everyone is taking this mentally in the locker room, though. I know there was at least one player who asked general manager Mike Mayoff for a day off to process things this week. A lot to process, I think was the quote. But the biggest thing is that there's a lot of media that the Raiders organization, like, hey, Mark Davis had, Mark Davis knew about this earlier this summer, didn't say anything. There's a lot of PR buzz. There's a lot of PR control that this organization is going to have to be engaging in. And I don't know that a special teams coordinator who has had assistant head coach experience is going to be able to drop a cohesive game plan against a Denver Broncos defense that is very good. They have a lot of film on this team. These are division rivals. So Derek Carr, he's been a quarterback 1 for many of these matchups, but I'm relegating him to a volatile quarterback 2. Henry Ruggs, Hunter Renfrow. Denver currently ranks 3rd in our pass defense NEFF efficiency metrics. So I have, and again, you keep in mind all of the off-field stuff, or the Gruden fiasco. Ruggs, I've got him as a volatile wide receiver 4. I think that slot receiver Hunter Renfrow can stay as a high floor wide receiver 3, because I think that this team is just going to stick to just do what you know. Just go out there, do what you know. I don't think they're going to game plan too much for the Broncos defense. It's just going to be do what you know. They know that Hunter Renfrow can get open in the short to intermediate area of the field. So I like him as a wide receiver 3, especially in full point PPR formats. I think that he is a wide receiver 4, maybe in half point PPR formats, but wide receiver 37 is maybe where you'd rank him. Bryan Edwards, not a fantasy factor. Darren Waller, I think, is going to be the guy who they just go, we know that he can get open. And I think like Derek, just throw it to him. I think that's going to be the game plan, is just go where you know, and he knows Darren Waller. So Waller, I think, is a high end tight end 1. I think he can go hit 15 targets this week. And I don't mean that hyperbolically. I think that that's very much within his potential range of outcomes. So far on this season, Darren Waller has seen a number of high single digit target outings, and then 19 in week 1. So 15 is totally doable. Josh Jacobs, this is the usage that I have wanted him to see since he was drafted. He's finally getting dual threat treatment. That is new. That is not how things were. And now that Gruden's out of there, I hope that they stick to it, because Gruden was always so desperate to bring in a passing game specialist. So here's what's going on. Jacobs has seen increases, I believe, in routes run and targets since he returned from his ankle or injury. I believe that was week 3. Yeah, weeks 2 and 3. And Kenyon Drake has been all but phased out of the game plan. Now, Denver is allowing just 11.8 half-point PPR points to opposing running backs, 3rd fewest in the NFL, and their pass defense rating is ranks 4th. It's a brutal friggin' matchup, but I think that Josh Jacobs finally has bell cow treatment, dual threat treatment, and I think that he's going to see 20 touches. So I'm locking him in as a running back 2. Maybe his ceiling is capped at running back 16, but that kind of volume gets you somewhere. And so I'm treating Josh Jacobs as a running back 2 this week. Denver Broncos, Teddy Bridgewater. I think that they're going to beat the hell out of the Raiders defense. I apologize if that's insensitive phrasing. I can consider changing that, but point is, I think that Teddy Bridgewater is going to put up a lot of fantasy points. I would comfortably rank him as a high-end quarterback 2 who can finish inside the top 12 at the position. But the Raiders franchise is in turmoil. They're down a couple of cornerbacks, most notably Trayvon Mullen, who is a starter on the perimeter, and Damon Arnett, who is more so a depth guy. He was someone who John Gruden made Mike Mayock reach up for in the first round, I think 2 or 3 years ago. But anyway, Courtland Sutton is going to dominate them. What is left of their starting cornerback core. He's a locked-in wide receiver 2 with top 12 upside. Sutton is a physically dominant, crisp route running receiver, and I think he's one of the best playing the game today. Tim Patrick has finished with 10 or more half-point PPR points in 4 of 5 games this season. I think that trend holds again in week 6. He is a back-end wide receiver 3. Kendall Hinton has played Deontay Spencer out of a job as the team's starting slot receiver. Spencer was relegated to, I think he saw 1 target, but was forced just into return duties. Hinton, who was famous for having to play emergency quarterback in 1 game last week due to the COVID protocol, preventing free agent signings when the quarterback room got COVID and all that. He got 2 of 3 targets for 25 yards and 1 touchdown. It's not a gaudy sum, but he has won this job from Deontay Spencer, as evidenced by the usage. And he gets to go up against Raiders cornerback Nate Hobbs. Hobbs has allowed 15 catches on 18 slot targets for 111 yards this season per Pro Football Focus. I think that puts Hinton safely as a high-end wide receiver 5. Nothing flashy, but if you're in a deep league, multi-flex league, maybe you start 4 wide receivers, I think that Kendall Hinton can produce for you. Albert Okwuegbunam was placed on injured reserve ahead of last week's game on Saturday, and Noah Fant's underlying usage shot through the roof. He saw season highs in snaps, 97%, and routes run with 38. He flopped in the box score, which makes him a very good pickup candidate. Someone might have cut him. He is also a great DFS candidate after that kind of a flop. So Noah Fant, he's a tight end one against a Raiders defense that's allowing 12.2 half-point PPR points per game to opposing tight ends. 11th most in the NFL. What's going on with Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams? I wrote this up as one of my standout, Melvin Gordon is one of my standout starts in the standalone running back ranking piece this week. You can get all of the information. It's chock full of it in the rundown. Here's the deal. Javonte Williams continues to make big, flashy plays. He also continues to make mistakes. He lost a fumble. I think that was he lost a fumble in the fourth quarter in their game against in week 3. Did it lose them the game? No, but he still fumbled when they were trying to give him some more run. That's not a good tick in the feel good column for a conservative coach like Vic Fangio, who's defensive minded. In week 5, immediately after breaking off, I think it was a 49-yard run. It was beautiful. He gets tackled right in front of the end zone, but because he wants to celebrate as though he scored a touchdown, he walks into the end zone and spikes the football, thereby giving the Denver Broncos a 5-yard delay of game penalty. Again, Williams is a very good player, and they're actually using him in the passing game too. I think he's actually blocking better as a pass blocker than Melvin Gordon is. He's running routes. But Melvin Gordon is still maintaining a lead, 4.7 to 4.6 in the yards per attempt category. He has 10 receptions for 96 yards. That's 9.6 yards per reception. Williams has 11 receptions for 75 yards, which is 6.8 yards per reception. Gordon is not going anywhere. Now, maybe Javonte Williams can take the lead back job as the season progresses, but Melvin Gordon is every defensive coach's dream. He is a tried and true veteran. He's very good in both aspects of the game. At worst, I think Gordon is relegated to a 40% usage. I think he could be relegated to 40% of the touches down the line. Right now, he's still the lead back in this backfield. Given the Raiders' upheaval, with John Gruden, they're not going to be focused this week. And their defensive front currently ranks 27th in our run defense efficiency metrics. I think that Melvin Gordon is a high-end running back too. I ranked a mid-tier running back too. I'll get you the number here. He's my running back 17 on the week, and Javonte Williams is my running back 21 on the week. I think these two are just going to pummel the front seven for big gains, and I'm excited about it. Dallas Cowboys at New England Patriots. So I think that the biggest thing working against Dak, so the New England defense is really good, but I think that maybe the biggest issue is the pace of play in this one might just be kind of a slog. I'm still ranking him as a mid-tier quarterback 1, maybe quarterback 7. I just wouldn't expect a big ceiling game out of him because of the pace of play. CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper. So Cooper is playing banged up. He's got a rib injury and he's nursing a hamstring injury. He continues to go out there and carve it up. They're not seeing the intense passing game sums that we would want them to. New England's defensive back group is very good. Their pass defense rating in our efficiency metrics coined by Patty Cooper are 6th best in the NFL, but CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper are probably the 2 best wide receiver in terms of a pure wide receiver duo, probably the top in the league. I'm treating them as wide receiver 2s this week, not wide receiver 1s because of the matchup. Wide receiver 2s, you're not benching either of these guys, so they're still fantastic. Cedric Wilson, so slot receiver Cedric Wilson, he could garner some DFS appeal. I think that he's a wide receiver 4 or 5 this week. He's really not seeing a lot of usage, but Bill Belichick has cycled his slot cornerbacks and he settled on Jonathan Jones. Jones is practicing. I believe he's got some sort of injury. I'll double check that right now. He is practicing in full, so I don't think that he's going to be out this week. But he's an older player. He's like 6 or 7 or 8 year veteran, I think. He's got an ankle injury. And Cedric Wilson is just a young player. So I'm not telling you to start him in redrafts. I like him as a borderline wide receiver 4/5. We've been kind of high on Wilson from time to time. And I think that, given the target volume of like 1 to 2 targets per week has not substantiated that. But I think that this could be one where he maybe can see 4 or 5 targets and just make a little bit of noise in the box score. But again, a deep league guy only. Dalton Schultz is playing so well that Blake Jarwin didn't even get a target last week. That is good, because what I think is going to happen here is that the overall target share to the tight end position in Dallas is going to regress because you have Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. But the fact that there have been 2 of them has made them a little bit sketchy at starting at times. Now, we noticed earlier on and have been breaking it down in the rundown and on Nerding Out that Dalton Schultz is the preferred guy on the team in scoring position. But the fact that he's separating from Blake Jarwin means that he might actually maintain his fantasy tight end 1 viability for the rest of the season, even if the usage starts going back towards CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper. So we're happy about that. He's got 31 targets. They're on the team behind the big 2 top dogs. And what I really like, his scoring position usage is right there with Amari Cooper. Per Pro Football Focus, he's converted 8 of his red zone targets for 3 touchdowns. Amari Cooper, 4 touchdowns on 13 red zone targets, and CeeDee Lamb, 2 touchdowns on 9 red zone targets. So he's right in the thick of it with those guys. Now, New England is severely limiting opposing tight ends, 4.4 half-point PPR points per game, second fewest in the league. But when you get this kind of usage, especially on a high-powered offense, you stick with them. I am keeping Dalton Schultz as a mid-tier tight end 1 this week. Ezekiel Elliott, so he operated on efficiency, saw his lowest snap share of the week, and he also suffered a rib injury, but he still got it done. He scored, I think, 2 touchdowns, cleared 100 yards from scrimmage. You're starting him every week as an elite running back 1, unless there is some news that he's going to be limited due to, this rib injury. I don't expect that to be the case. Tony Pollard, he's a mid-range running back 3. I have to admit, part of that ranking, though, is due to the bye weeks. There are some backs that might be kind of pushing him down closer to running back 36 rather than like running back 32. If they were active this week, just because the New England defense does have a very good defensive front. But hey, because all those running backs, there's probably like 6 or 7 that would at least be in the conversation to be ahead of him, because there's a couple split backfields with the teams that are on bye. But he's running back 3 this week. New England Patriots, Mac Jones is his nickname, of the New England Patriots. So the Cowboys defense is playing really good this year, and Trevon Diggs, cornerback for the Cowboys, is firmly in contention for Defensive Player of the Year. So, and their pass rushes is playing well. So Mac Jones, mid to low quarterback 2 this week. Entering the season, I would have told you to start him here as a high-end quarterback 2, but nope. Cowboys are playing real good on defense. But that doesn't mean you should not start Jacoby Myers. So Myers has 46 targets this season. That is 19 more than the next closest Patriot. He's the focal point of the New England passing game. He will be going mano-a-mano against slot cornerback Jordan Lewis, who is having an okay season. Not good, not great. Myers is a high floor wide receiver 3 across all formats and has solid wide receiver 2 upside in full point PPR scoring. His 6 red zone targets are tied for second most on the team, but he is scoreless in all 5 games this season. So this is another example of something we were talking about earlier, positive touchdown regression. Again, tied for second on the team in red zone targets, but he doesn't have any touchdowns. He's going to start scoring touchdowns. Nelson Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne, I have them as boom bust wide receiver fives. One thing I want to flag, though, is that Cowboys starting free safety DeMonte KZ has registered back-to-back, did not participate designations in practice with a hip injury this week. So that could allow for Nelson Aguilar to be a DFS candidate, as he's going to be, maybe running a little more freely over the top. Hunter Henry continues to separate from Jonnu Smith as the receiving tight end. Jonnu Smith was never actually a bad blocker, but Hunter Henry was always a better blocker. That said, Smith is asked to block almost constantly now. He ran just 6 routes last week, despite seeing a big uptick in overall snaps. He matched Hunter Henry's snaps with 40, only ran 6 routes. Hunter Henry, meanwhile, ran 20 routes. It's not necessarily a fantastic matchup, but we're mining for usage here. I think that Hunter Henry can be a back end tight end one as he continues to put distance between he and Jonnu Smith. Final game of the of nerding out for week 6 here. This one will be fun. Sunday Night Football, Seattle Seahawks at the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I am lucky enough to have a team of physical therapists that I work with on a regular basis. Was able to chat with them about Russell Wilson's, or one of them, my primary physical therapist, about Russell Wilson's mallet finger injury. I've also read up on this. He should be out 6 to 8 weeks. They put a pin and wire into this, into his middle finger. And that was because the ligament basically, I think it basically became detached from the bone. You have to physically put it back into place. What this means is that he's going to have to teach himself how to hold the football again. That finger is never going to be the same. So my physical therapist that I spoke with, the way that he phrased it is that this is going to impact Russell Wilson for the remainder of his career. Now, does that mean that Russell Wilson is not going to be the player that he once was? No, not at all. He can do that. He has to be rigorous in his physical therapy. He has to learn how to throw this football, but he will be, whatever he does, think of anything that you've done since the age of 12 on a regular basis. I mean, you could even talk about writing. Just think of having to write. If you suffered a finger injury, you're going to feel a difference when you're writing. Russell Wilson's been playing since he was, in the Pee Wee leagues, and he no longer will have that muscle memory. I have experiences with this myself. I've broken a lot of bones, but the point is, Wilson was practicing at a limited capacity today on Thursday, throwing passes with his left hand. Is Pete Carroll going to let him go out there? Maybe. Probably not. I'd say 99% not, but Pete Carroll is just that crazy. So I think that Russell Wilson can make a full recovery here and come back and be the accurate downfield passer that he's always been, but he will have to work really hard, and we need to monitor his recovery. Every report, dissect it. What does Geno Smith mean for the Seattle Seahawks passing game, specifically in week 6? It means it's not going to be very good. So he is a failed early second round pick, I believe, if memory serves, from the New York Jets. He attempted 17 passes. I think 6 or 7 of them went further than 10 yards downfield. He completed 2 of them, one to DK Metcalf and the others to the other team. He's going to be a dink and dunk passer. And although the Pittsburgh Steelers have some holes in their defense, their pass rush doesn't have any holes. And I think that they're going to harass the hell out of him. So I have got Geno Smith as a borderline quarterback 2/3 this week. Real bad news for Seattle's receiving core. DK Metcalf has been battling a foot injury this season, and he was downgraded from a limited participant in practice on Wednesday to a did not participate on Thursday. We've talked at length already this evening what that means. It probably means that there was a setback. It could be that they're being conservative with him, but this is a bad sign. I'm not expecting DK Metcalf to play this week. If he's active, you start him as a high-end wide receiver 2, probably, not wide receiver 1. But I think we might be without him this week. In terms of Tyler Lockett, though, he's been splitting slot receiver reps with Freddie Swain. He's running on the perimeter as well, but he is short area quicks. He's a crisp route runner. And Geno Smith is the kind of passer who needs to see a guy open before he's going to let it go. Tyler Lockett's style of play, crisp route running, is going to aid him in that regard. So I've got Lockett as a high floor wide receiver 3 with wide receiver 2 upside if DK Metcalf is unable to play. If Metcalf is active, Freddie Swain shouldn't be anywhere near a starting lineup. Geno Smith is not good enough to support this many pass catchers, but if DK Metcalf is inactive, then Swain could be started as a wide receiver 5. He's a wide receiver 6 if Metcalf is on the field, though. I feel optimistically about tight end Gerald Everett. He had a rough bout with COVID, but he's an NFL player and he's back. Monitor reports. If he's limited due to, breathing issues or anything, then adjust accordingly. But I don't expect, we have not received any negative news on lingering COVID issues from Gerald Everett. So I expect him to bounce Will Dissly back to the number 2 tight end role. But something of note, and actually something of note with Tyler Lockett as well. Lockett had 10 targets in week 6, and 4 of them came in the fourth quarter when Geno Smith was the quarterback. So he locked on to Lockett. Did the same thing with Will Dissly. I'm taking this as a positional analysis more so than just Will Dissly, where Dissly finished with 4 total targets, but saw 3 of them in the fourth quarter when Geno Smith was playing. So I think that Gerald Everett is going to get lit up with targets. Just he's a big bodied guy. He's a good route runner. I think he can, Geno can see him. We'll throw it to him. Consider Everett a sneaky tight end 1 candidate this week, who could become the Geno Smith's number 1 safety blanket option. Will Dissly will be a tight end 2. As far as the running backs go, Pete Carroll, he had that big proclamation that Chris Carson's neck had taken a big turn, and they were so optimistic. What do you know? Chris Carson has been unable to practice on Wednesday and Thursday of this week. I don't think he's going to play, meaning Alex Collins and DJ Dallas are going to be the numbers 1 and 2 running back this week. Travis Homer was relegated to running back 3 duties. I'm not sure why, but they have swapped between Travis Homer and DJ Dallas plenty in the past. So Alex Collins, running back, is the running back 1. DJ Dallas is the running back 2, and he will get passing game work. Travis Homer, running back 3. I'm not interested in Homer at all for fantasy football purposes. In terms of the Seattle backs, I've ranked Alex Collins. Sorry, getting specific here for you guys. Alex Collins as just a running back 4. And the reason why here is it's a matchup based thing. So the Pittsburgh Steelers are limiting opposing backfields to 14.2 half-point PPR points per game. That is 4th fewest in the NFL. So Alex Collins probably going to be smashing into brick walls. Maybe he can barrel in for a touchdown and on a high volume of touches, but I'm not going anywhere near him or I'm not treating him as anything other than a mid to high running back for. DJ Dallas, meanwhile, is, I believe, just a wide receiver. He's my running back 43. So they're both on the running back 4 spectrum. Dallas could end up being an outlet pass for Geno Smith, but I'm not excited about either of those guys. Ben Roethlisberger could actually have his best game of the year against the Seattle Seahawks. I've got him as a mid-tier quarterback 2, but I think he can finish as a high-end quarterback 2. Seattle's pass defense efficiency rating is 37.0, which is 27th in the NFL per our own pass defense efficiency metrics. Not similar pocket passers. That's probably a rude way to phrase it, but statues in the pocket, like Kirk Cousins and Matthew Stafford, both cleared well over 300 passing yards against Seattle. Now, Roethlisberger is the most immobile of that bunch by a country mile. But I still think that Roethlisberger is an okay streaming option if you're up a creek. Wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster, slot receiver Juju Smith-Schuster is out for the year with a shoulder injury. Downfield Z receiver Chase Claypool and X receiver Deontay Johnson should see a sizable increase in targets. Maybe, 4 or so could come. 4 more could come their way. And that's great for this week. Seattle Seahawks are allowing 35.8 half-point PPR points to opposing wide receivers, 6th most in the NFL. I think you can start both of these guys as wide receiver 2s. Ray McLeod is the man who runs as the direct replacement for Juju Smith-Schuster, not downfield rotational guy James Washington, who will go somewhere else and do great things next year. But he's going to be running one-on-one with Seattle Seahawks slot cornerback Ugo Amadi. Amadi in slot coverage has allowed 10 of 13 targets to get past him for 82 yards and 1 touchdown. I think that Ray McLeod deserves wide receiver 4 consideration in redraft formats and has some DFS appeal. Rookie tight end Pat Freiermuth continues to play well, but Eric Ebron is factoring in, and so Freiermuth cannot be trusted and is anything more than a tight end 2. Pittsburgh Steelers running back Najee Harris. I've got him as a running back 5 overall this week. Seattle is allowing 27.8 half-point PPR points per game to opposing backfields, 3rd most in the NFL, and they're also allowing 6.6 running back receptions and 62.8 running back receiving yards, which are both bottom 5 in the league, meaning 5 worst. They cannot cover running backs in the receiving game at all. So fire up Najee Harris as a high-end running back 1 this week. They've had Anthony McFarland designated to return from injured reserve for 2 weeks now. They still haven't activated him. I think that this is their last chance to do so ahead of this week's game. So I assume that they're going to. Benny Snell has been the number 1 backup for this team. He's not playing at all, but Anthony McFarland Jr. is a capable dual threat who should be rostered across all leagues as soon as he's activated. That'll do it, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is my highlight of my week. I may be exhausted, but I'm having the time of my life. So I appreciate each and every one of my listeners. Like I said, we're gonna have some fun guests. I'm so excited to talk injuries with some medical professionals in week 7 and week 8. Hit me up on Twitter at ginger__Nick, spelled NIC, if you have any questions. Until next week, guys.